this topic of clean energy, I'd like to pass along some ideas that I've come up with over the last several years, or that I've seen, that I think distill some of the best ideas I've had regarding energy. I've studied energy technology my whole career, and I think these ideas are something you may not have heard of, and that I particularly like. First of all, the relationship between electric cars, solar, and wind. Electric cars, cars that burn fuel create air pollution, especially in crowded areas like cities. So I propose that instead of burning liquid fuels, even biofuels, in internal combustion engines in cars, we use electric cars with no air pollution in the cities and tie them to variable sources of energy like wind and solar. Now, one of the problems with wind and solar is that they're highly variable, and just connecting them to the grid in greater and greater percentages will lead to instability of the grid. And so instead of that, we need to have storage to buffer that variability. I propose we combine the storage in electric cars with the general system generation created by solar and wind. Now, right now, we can connect electric cars to the grid in a one-way fashion, and it's not designed. These systems are not designed to allow the car to power the house or to connect directly to solar and wind generation within the house or the buildings. So I propose that the government create standards that the auto companies would use to make the connections two-way. That way, if you lost power at your home, you could use the battery and or generator within the car to run your house until the power was restored, giving the whole system a much more robust backup system. We could pass building codes that would require large flat roof buildings like this Boeing plant in Charleston, South Carolina, to put solar panels on the roof. Right now, this type of system feeds into the grid, where the variability of solar causes stability issues. Instead, I suggest that those panels be hooked into charging stations in the parking lot, so that when people drive to work, they could restore the power that they used to get there from the building roof area. And if they had surplus in the cars, the building could actually tap into that energy from the cars in the parking lot to use during the high-cost peak demand periods of the afternoon and evening. People could then reserve enough power to drive home and finish charging their cars at night from off-peak, low-cost electricity. Mass transit. For mass transit to work, it has to be quicker and cheaper than personal autos. And the way to do that, I feel, is to use our existing infrastructure. Instead of trying to build new train lines through existing urban areas, I suggest we use our highways, but we use the new driverless car technologies to automate a new type of system that I call bus trains. Now, the thing about mass transit is the limitation is not the top speed of the train or bus, but the number of stops it has to make, which just ruin its average speed. So in this idea, we would have buses that have traffic priority. They would cruise the major highways without stopping. And then local transfer buses would mate with the bus while it was moving, and then they would come up behind it, match speed, lock on, and then at the driver's discretion, the doors would open, people could transfer between, and then the local bus would disengage and drop people off at the local transfer station. That way, the passengers in the main bus would not have to wait while the bus stopped to pick up and drop off passengers, greatly improving the efficiency and speed with which somebody could get to work. The problem with this type of system is always that last mile or the first mile. I suggest we use the new driverless technologies or the iPhone apps called Uber taxis. For example, let's say one of the people in the household worked all day downtown, the other spent the day in the neighborhood. So one person could take their car to the train station, or the bus station, excuse me. When they got there, they would tell the car to drive itself home, so it could be available for the person at home to use all day. That way the family could use one less car and save on all of those expenses. Then when the person got to the destination, or before they got there, they'd take out their smartphone and use an app to call a driverless car or a taxi to meet them at the station, so they'd walk right out of the transfer bus into a vehicle that would take them the last mile without waiting. So I think with this system, you could make a mass transit system that would be quicker and cheaper than owning your own car. Most families have one car per driver in the United States. Our goal here would be reduce the number of cars per family by at least one. Safe nuclear power. If we're going to have clean power, we need it in large quantities, available 24/7. It has to be abundant, safe, and clean, and reliable. So I propose we take a new look at nuclear power and develop it based on thorium rather than uranium-plutonium. The current plans for nuclear power plants were designed when computers used punch cards. And they were offshoots of the weapons program and the Manhattan Project. So as a result of that weapons program genealogy, our current electric power system is based on a uranium-plutonium cycle. There's another cycle that can be used instead. It's a thorium-uranium cycle. And it has great advantages over uranium and plutonium. And the reason it was created during the Manhattan Project, but it was dropped because they didn't make good weapons. This system didn't. So now that it's time to revive that, take another look at it, because it uses a molten salt as a coolant, so it's already melted. There's no meltdown problems. It doesn't need to be pressurized, so you don't need a steel containment vessel inches thick and then a concrete containment building. So as a result, the thing can be much smaller. You could fit one of these things into something the size of a couple of train cars. The reason for going nuclear is that each individual nuclear reaction has 200 million times more energy than a chemical reaction. To make that personal, you could hold a lifetime supply of thorium fuel in your hand for your transportation, heating, cooling, electricity, everything. A whole lifetime supply, and it would be the size of a golf ball. And at the end of its use, that small piece would be your nuclear waste. It would be radioactive, but because it doesn't contain plutonium, which is the bad actor in nuclear waste, this type of nuclear radioactive waste would have a much shorter half-time. So burying this about 30 feet underground or in a concrete vault away from people would be adequate, and it would lose 2/3, 3/4 of its radioactivity in a single lifetime. For other ideas on making things better and big ideas for 2020, you can go to my channel on YouTube, or you can go to pctraining.net/vision.htm.